Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hi, I'm Robin Brumfield. I'm the Farm Management Specialist here at Rutgers, and we're going to talk about SWOT analysis, which was one of the key components that other Annie's Project participants have liked about doing the business plan. So you have a couple of things we're working from. You have a handout that it's writing your business plan, the PowerPoint that I'm going to go over. Unfortunately, the Rutgers red logo turns sort of black when you when it turns to black and white. And that we're going to start on page 4. So that'll follow along with the PowerPoint. Secondly, we created this business planning workbook. Jenny talked about the ag plan at the University of Minnesota, which is very helpful, but it's hard to do that online in one day. So we want to get you started in one day. So we have one that you can write on and fill out sections. And the SWOT analysis that I'm going to talk about starts on page 14 of this handout. So there's some description there. And then on page 15, when we have our work session, you can start filling in this form, and if you like, then you can transfer that over to the University of Minnesota, or you can just keep writing on this plan. The idea of this workbook is we have some descriptions of each section. We have an example farm that I made up that's a greenhouse in New Jersey, and then we have blanks for you to fill out. So that's sort of how I think. Hope it works for you. Is describe it, give an example, and then give a place for you. And also the green boxes are tips or questions you need to think about in each section, and the orange boxes are that example farm, and then the white boxes are for you to fill in. So that's how that works. And feel free to stop me at any time with questions. So during a SWOT analysis, SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And strengths and weaknesses are resources that you have within your control that are related to you or your farm. Opportunities and threats are external. So we'll go over all that in detail, and you'll follow that today. So starting with the strengths and weaknesses within your control, like what are your personal abilities and limitations as the manager? How does that impact your farm? Also the physical plant, the physical land, the buildings. Are they modern and efficient? Or are they old? What about your soil? Someone was just telling me yesterday they took over a farm that the soil had been totally depleted, so that was her biggest challenge, is rebuilding the soil. How close are you to a market? If you're right on a major route, that is perfect for direct marketing. It doesn't mean that you can't do direct marketing if you're out, but it's just going to mean you're going to have to work a little harder. So those are things to be aware of. Can you do the farm better than your competition? For you to succeed, there has to be your core competency, your comparative advantage. What are you doing better than somebody else? There's obviously things that in certain areas people are going to be better than you, but overall there's something that's within you, within your business, that gives you that competitive advantage that helps us build what we call the value proposition for the consumer. And you'll hear us talk a lot about consumers today. In the past, going back to my parents' generation, they had coupons. There was a shortage of things, so they couldn't buy as much as they wanted. So whatever you produced as a farmer, somebody was going to buy. There was a ready market. Well, that's not true anymore. Now we have an oversupply of things. So that's putting the emphasis more on the consumer. There's more goods and services out there than people want or can afford. So how do you give them something that is valuable to them, that's of value to them, so that they come to you? So it's a whole different paradigm. We're not working on a production economy anymore. We're coming from a consumer demand perspective. So always keep that consumer in mind. And it's not easy for traditional farmers to think that way. It's a new way of thinking for everybody in the economy. And then what's your cash flow position? Those are the kinds of things that are internal. Opportunities and threats are forces that are beyond your control, that are external, like market trends, like the recession, consumer demands and demographics, their lifestyle changes. We've moved from the traditional dad goes to work, mom stays at home, to two-income couples. Those are things that are bigger than your farm, that you're not going to have control over, but you can work with or understand those forces. The weak or strong currency, that affects things coming in from Canada, Mexico, other countries. Interest rates and inflation, government policies and labor markets. So things that are outside of your control but will impact your farm and you. So I'm going to go back here a little bit to the beginning of the handout because I think I have time to do that so that we get, I'm not going to cover all this, but I just want to describe this pretend farm so you get an idea when I'm talking about the strengths and weaknesses. So going back to this too, my main thing is your main function as the manager is to manage. A lot of times I find farmers are doing like labor, which there's nothing wrong with that, but if it's avoiding doing the management, that's probably not a good move for you. So again, getting back to your core competencies, so your comparative advantage, looking at the big picture, building on strengths and overcoming weaknesses, and considering those external forces, and then aligning with the business trends. So we're going to talk a little bit later about business description, but again, how is your farm unique? What are your customers? Where are you located? Who's the owner? These are all things that we can think about in the SWOT analysis. What are your financial capabilities and so forth? What you'll produce and why. So this is the example farm. I grow bedding plants and poinsettias, hanging baskets, perennials, and garden mums so that I have crops all year round. I plan to grow my own plugs and rooted cuttings in the winter so that I can ensure top quality for my customers. I'll sell extra flats of plugs and rooted cuttings to other producers. I'll produce perennials for spring sales, and I'll grow my poinsettia stock plants, finished poinsettias and florist mums, and I'll grow outdoor garden mums for fall sales. The description is it's a wholesale floriculture business specializing in unique high-quality plants to retail garden centers. They have a 25,000 square foot greenhouse that's glass. I plan to grow bedding plants, poinsettias, hanging baskets, perennials, and so forth. And then there's a 5-acre tract that's not currently, with a barn that's not currently in use. So that's when you go back to the SWOT, that's the farm we're talking about in the example, and I want you to think about your farm and what your strengths and weaknesses are. If you look at page 15 of the workbook that you're going to be working on today when you have work sessions, and we have some sections that because we're trying to do this all in one day, we won't be able to cover, so we hope that's useful to you to take home and do. But as we look on page 15, these are the categories that we suggest you think about for your farm. There may be others. You may have more than one strength in, say, a financial category, or you may not have any. So just to sort of trigger your thoughts, somebody asked, can I just list all the pros and all the cons? Yes, you can do that. So whatever works for you. So I wanted to go through this example. So I find that examples help me then think about how I can expand that to my life. So for this garden state greenhouse, a strength is that Mary's starting the greenhouse. Her husband, John, has a job, so she doesn't have to support the family with the greenhouse initially, so that's a financial strength. There's off-farm income. A weakness is that net worth is tied up in the greenhouses, which will rapidly depreciate. She's bought this from another person, an existing business, and it's glass and it's getting a little bit old. In terms of marketing, her strength is that she's located 3 miles outside of a city that has 3 supermarkets. Now, things that you produce in a greenhouse could be sold at the supermarket, all those bedding plants and things. So those could be potential customers. The weakness is if she moves into direct marketing, she bought this from an existing business and he didn't do direct marketing, so she has to build up the market. So it's going to take a while. Not that it can't happen, but there's no customer base at the moment. So she would have to work to get people to come to her greenhouse. In terms of profit, her husband has provided enough money to live on, so they have the luxury of building the greenhouse long term. And I know probably a lot of you are in that situation. Maybe we need to talk about it. You know, a lot of times you start up as part-time, so you have another job during the day, or someone else in the family has another job. A weakness is that she's starting out wholesale, so sales are limited and profit potential is limited. We mentioned that before. Personnel, she's got 2 children, and they can help out after school for now. And the family is behind her plans to start a business. A weakness is labor is the largest cost of a greenhouse business, and it'll be even higher in 3 or 4 years when her children go off to college. In addition to that, as far as family finances, she's probably going to help them with their tuition. So that's something they need to think about in terms of personal and business finances down the road. And the business will take time away from family activities that they did before, unless they can make this something that the family all likes to do together. A production strength is that the greenhouse is surrounded by enough flat land that they can consider agri-entertainment options, like pick your own pumpkins, Indian corn, haunted houses, corn mazes, pick your own strawberries. More than 43% of businesses in New Jersey, farm businesses, are involved in agri-entertainment. So why is that important? Well, what do we have in New Jersey? We have a lot of people. We're the most densely populated state in the country. So that's the comparative advantage that most of you have by being here. The downside is everything's more expensive than any other state. But so you play on your strengths and you try to deal with the weaknesses. Production facilities are old and limit mechanization. Sometimes I find greenhouses may end up just abandoning the old site and moving down the road so that they can make things more efficient, because it's very hard to automate in old facilities, especially if it's not flat. So those are things to think about. In terms of sales, the strength is she took over an existing business, so she has existing customers. She can draw on those while she gets started. A weakness, we mentioned before, the previous owner sold only wholesale. She's only half an acre. So unless she increases in other seasons and other enterprises, she doesn't have a lot of sale potential. Facilities, we mentioned that there was a small barn that they're not using right now. That could possibly be a roadside stand. It's highly visible from a heavily traveled road, and it lends itself to window boxes and other displays. A weakness is the greenhouses are in fair condition at best, and they're in need of modernization and repair. Okay, any questions about strengths and weaknesses? So that would be on page 15. Now we're going to switch to opportunities and threats. So on page 16, there's some questions to ask yourself and some description, and 17 is where we're going to ask you in a few minutes to actually fill this out. How are we doing on time? Good, okay. So for this particular greenhouse, again, we made categories, and one of them was cultural and demographic trends, and an opportunity is the two-income family phenomenon. So they have money to spend, and another thing is consumers are getting more sophisticated. They don't just want plants from Walmart. They may buy, nice quality ones from her, and they recognize good material. The downside of this two-income family is even though they have money, they don't have time, so they may not be interested in gardening. So we may want to do some things for them, like container gardening and things like that. So again, thinking of ways you can turn those weaknesses into a strength. An opportunity in the market and globalization trends. Customers are looking for a shopping experience. Nobody just wants to go buy things anymore. And that's one of the things that a lot of farms in New Jersey are playing on, is people want to go experience something. And most, less than 1% of people live on farms anymore. So that's unique and interesting for them. They don't get that in their regular life. So it's something to do as an outing for a family. They're also, in spite of the economy, they're buying local, they're buying green. So they're spending on some of the things that you could be producing, and for this greenhouse particularly. A threat is that increasingly superstores and warehouse stores are selling plant material from other states and other countries at lower cost and more favorable exchange rates, so they're pushing prices down. Prices have not risen in a long time. And consumers are still concerned about the economy. They're not so willing to spend money. The good side for greenhouses is we always say it's kind of, it doesn't get impacted by the economy, because when the times are bad, people don't go on vacations and they stay home and put a little bit more into their landscape. So we can work with that. Input costs and opportunity. This could also be considered a threat, but people are producing low-cost plants. So one thing you can do is the standard products, buy them from a competitor, resell those, focus on growing things that you can do well at a higher profit that are unique. So again, always looking for ways of turning threats and weaknesses into strengths and opportunities. A threat is prices are declining, and has labor cost increase. So, I mean, profits are declining. Costs are staying stable. You've got this cost price squeeze. All the costs are going up and the prices are staying the same or even down. I mean, I found some floral products in my local market for amazingly low prices. I don't know how producers are making any money. Technology. An opportunity is technology is improving in terms of communications and it's becoming less costly. You can buy PCs much less than you could in the past, cell phones too. A threat, as a producer, you're going to be left behind if you don't jump on that social media bandwagon. It can be an opportunity, but it can be a threat if you don't use it. As a small producer, it's hard to compete with large, low-cost producers that are mechanized. You mentioned that. Regulations is always a big one when I'm dealing with farmers in New Jersey. We're very regulated. An opportunity is, though, consumers may want to learn about the biological controls that maybe you put in place in producing your plants and that you're using reduced pesticides. A threat is that minor use pesticides used in greenhouses are being removed from the market and they're coming under pressure and they're more costly to register. So you're going to have to find other ways of dealing with pest control. In terms of government programs, regulations, and political changes, an opportunity is everybody's looking for native, local, deer-resistant, drought-tolerant, environmentally friendly. So you can produce plants that offer those. The downside is deer eat just about anything. So people are not going to keep buying things and have the deer eat them. So there are not many plants that are really deer that they won't eat. They'll eat anything pretty much. So that's a problem in New Jersey, as hunting is, people are against that. So some things to ask when you're doing your SWOT analysis is what protection levels do you have now and do you want to change that? Where is your location? I mentioned that before. Does it lend itself to direct marketing or wholesale marketing? How much land do you own and have access to? How does that impact what you're going to do? What about the machinery and facilities? What are their age and conditions? Can you use them better than you're using them now? You may want to share with a neighbor, rent things from a neighbor, or offer your services as custom machinery to another neighbor. What's the financial condition of the farm? What about your cash position? Very few farms, except for CSAs, have money up front. You usually have to shell out all the money for the inputs, and then you sell it, and then you collect the money down the road. So you're probably going to need to make sure that you have some source of cash, of operating cash, to finance this farm. If you can get a line of credit or some other way to cover your cash flow position. Because some businesses fail, even though they're profitable, because of the cash flow of when the money comes in, when it goes out. What are the skills of the owner and managers? Other questions is, do your skills and resource limit the alternatives? Not all of us can do everything. One way of overcoming this is when you hire people. Maybe you can hire somebody that complements your skill set. We tend to always want to hire people like us, but that might not be the best move, because if you're very good with mechanics and not with people, and you're going to do direct marketing, you might want to hire somebody that can do the direct marketing piece. What are production and marketing opportunities? What about your social responsibility? We have some people that are very religious that don't want to work on Sundays. Sundays is a good day to sell things, but if that doesn't fit into your values, that's not going to be a good fit for you. So those are things to consider. Can you form alliances with other businesses that can complement yours? Maybe buy cooperatively, sell cooperatively, other things that I might not be thinking of. Partnership marketing is a big thing. You see the breast cancer pink ribbon on everything. They're making alliances. So you can make those kind of alliances with other businesses as well. Even down the hall, I saw where the PNC, some kind of meeting room. So that's an alliance with this community college and PNC. So that's the way everything in the marketplace is working right now. There's probably things that you can think of for your business. What marketing channels are possible? And this part, the SWOT analysis and the mission statement that we're doing, is part of a strategic planning part of your business plan. So when you come up with your plan, do you need some greater competency that maybe you don't have, and where can you go get those? Maybe through employees. What are their skills and talents? Can you tap those? What about family members? Maybe they can bring something to the table. And then another track we have here is the next generation. How do you bring them into the business, and how do you transfer it? What role do they play? You want to make sure you have an estate plan. There's a little minor section in here, but if you don't have that, you need to think about that in the future. What about the layout of the farm itself as far as production efficiencies? How does that impact your ability to keep costs down and be efficient? And do you have adequate water supply? So the SWOT analysis is matching your strengths and weaknesses to the external opportunities and threats, looking at key factors for success, and identifying your strengths and overcoming your weaknesses. And if you work through this, you're probably going to change. A lot of the women yesterday said, you know what, it looked better in my head than when I put it on paper, or now that I put it on paper, I see some opportunities that I didn't think of before. So it's always a work in progress. What you want to do is come up with a business plan and review that every year, see if you're making progress on that. I used to say roadmap. I guess now Karen says GPS. You don't do roadmaps anymore. You use GPS. Make sure you're on that track. If you're not, maybe you've changed. Maybe you need to change your business plan and see where you're going. Also, in your workbook after the SWOT analysis, you can look at some different strategies that you want to pursue and look at those alternatives and pick one or two, or maybe all of them, or maybe none of them. All the time you want to look at your core competencies as a person and as a business, and how does that fit with your consumer and the product that you're offering. Reducing costs, no matter where you are, is important because it's a really competitive world market out there. The key, though, is I think looking for something other people aren't doing. So some things to think about that might be useful in your plan. Look at your comparative advantage. I've mentioned that several times. What do you do better than other people? Focus on your core competency. Listen to your customers. And if you're just starting out, go to where customers are. Go to the competition and ask them. If I were this greenhouse, maybe I would go to Walmart and ask people that are buying plants, why are you buying that plant? What do you like about it? There's also statistics and things available. But most people say they listen to the customers, but they don't really listen and implement and change based on what the customer's needs. But thinking about who your customers are and what they need will really help. Know your cost, and then try to focus on cost control. You may not want to hire as many people, or you may want to maintain a workforce year-round. The other thing, I've been working with farmers for a long time now, and the interesting phenomena I found is the people that pay the highest labor wage per hour have the lowest total labor cost as a percentage of sales. And that's not saying to run out and give everybody a raise, but I think it speaks to the whole business philosophy. If you're treating people well, if you're paying them well, you're going to keep good people, you're going to get people that will perform for you. If you're trying to find the lowest cost people, they're probably not that interested in doing your work for you. You're going to have a high turnover, retraining, and so forth all the time. So, people are, I think, the most important part of your business, your customers, yourself, your employees. If you don't have people, you're not going to run a business. So communication skills are key. So looking at the greenhouse business, this is Arie van Voot. About 2007, 2008, energy costs went through the roof. That was tough on greenhouses. So he thought, what do I have? I have land. I can grow my own fuel. It was a good combination because he's using switchgrass to produce his own fuel. 2 minutes? Okay. And it complements what he was doing. He can start the switchgrass in his greenhouse in the winter when he doesn't have a lot of space taken up with plants. As he harvests it, he grows it. The main operations are in the summer when greenhouses are too hot and he didn't have much going on then. And then in the fall, he harvests it, stores it in the greenhouse in the winter when he doesn't have a lot happening, and then he burns it as he needs the space for his bedding plants. So it was a good complement for him, and he guarantees his fuel price. He's not at the whims of the market anymore. So there's things like that that can help. You can diversify your product line, offer more than one line. We always say this in economics is a way to reduce your risk is to diversify. I think greenhouses, for one, have over-diversified. So it's kind of a trade-off. You want more than, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, but you don't want so many baskets that you can't keep up with them either. Okay. Again, Ari Van Voot thought, what can I grow that nobody else is growing? He thought of these pet greens. So that's been very successful. So I've looked at a lot of business plans over the last 3 years, and I'm so amazed at so many different ideas that our women farmers have, and they're all different, and that's what works, because you usually find a niche that nobody else is serving, and that's how you can make money. Bigger is not necessarily better. We can discuss that more if you like, but if you're having problems small, getting bigger is not the solution. You want to fix what you have before you get bigger. In terms of pricing in a tough economy, some options you have are dropping prices, but then you're going to train customers to look for you to drop the prices. So some people will destroy their product rather than do that to keep their reputation high. Or you may add value. I was working with some growers in Rochester, New York, and one of the things that happens, if you're selling greenhouse products and people are buying them to plant outside, if it's a rainy weekend, they're not going to buy them. It had been raining for several weeks. Plants were getting tall. They couldn't sell them. Instead of throwing them out the door, they cut them all back, repotted them into bigger containers to sell later. So they basically turned lemons into lemonade. So farmers are very good at thinking of those things. So you can add services. This is all in your handout. I think I'm running out of time. But you can integrate horizontally, so spread your costs out over more different product lines. This I'm finding more and more in New Jersey. For example, greenhouses are often adding new things like Christmas trees in a season that they weren't very busy before, or outdoor vegetable production in the summer. Ari added the biofuels, so spreading different production enterprises to keep your people employed and the business happy. Or integrate vertically, take more up and down the market chain. Like I said, the last survey was 43% of New Jersey farmland is in agritourism. It's probably even more now. And it's a big business. Benchmark your cost. If you don't have industry cost to benchmark against, do your own. Because most agriculture is not a corporation, so it's not publicly available information. But keep your own records. So you're going to talk about financial planning later. Every year, compare your ratios, your profit margins from last year to this year, and track it for several years. We talked about partnership. You may not want to compete in the lowest price market. Some people can do that in New Jersey, but you have to be aware of what you're getting into. When times are tough, you have to have higher quality. We look at all the types of crop insurance and other kinds of insurance to reduce your risk. Add value to your products we talked about. This was a little, I've been doing a lot of work in Turkey, training women farmers there, and I went there for my sabbatical, and I've been back several years, and I was impressed by this that they gave me for teaching, because they added value. They took the flowers, they put a little fake ladybug on it, which I thought was cute. They put ribbons and pearls and net, and so they weren't just growing the flowers, they were adding value to it. And they could get a higher price. I'm sure whoever bought this had to pay more than just for the flowers. Again, we talked about your niche, and I think you are all good about finding that. And look at the system. Like I said, bigger isn't necessarily better. Think about restructuring and eliminating debt before you want to get bigger. A lot of times people just say, I'm going to sell more, but you need to fix what's wrong before you get bigger. So we talked about a risk management plan. Look at the big picture, look at your core competencies, build on your strengths, and overcome your weaknesses. Is this the time now for them to write? No. Oh, the mission, okay. So Jenny talked about the ag plan. We also have other resources on my website that's at the end of your handout, and we will pass out this workbook called To Market when we talk about marketing a little bit later today. So I will be around all day. I've just been going and listening to the estate planning speaker we have from out of state so that I can get information to help you, but I'm here all day. I'm here to help you. So